John Harris is a member of God's chosen industry, the building trade, and founder of the People's United Community, and more. John spoke at the British Constitution Group conference at Stoke, focused on law, which protects us. He opened a few eyes on that score, by the way, and he encouraged us to look into common law ourselves and how it can protect us if we know how to use it. He highlighted our constabularies, the strange entities that they have become, the corporatisation of MPs, councils and judiciary, all for our benefit. Just joking. The sovereignty of our nation may have to use what remains of our constitution to prevent us becoming an EU district. Tonight's talk will be entertaining, but more importantly, will be a call for action. Ladies and gentlemen, John Harris.
I am a carpenter by trade, that is my trade, a wood butcher we're called. I did start this website, TPUC, about 2 years ago. Didn't know why I started it. I just watched the film about 9/11, saw something and it sparked something off in me, and I can't explain what that is. But for 2 years, information has been coming to me. I don't look for it, it comes to me. And the faces in the audience, Nick and Richie, one of the admin from TPUC, who've brought me information that I've kind of slotted together. I kind of like standing in front of a big jigsaw puzzle and bits keep just falling into place. And I suddenly realised, for a lot of my own personal experiences, and I will say person, because at the time I believed I was a person, I suddenly realised I was living in an illusion, in more than a couple of senses. I am taken aback by this a little bit, so just give me a chance to get into this, because it's, when I did Stoke, I did the evangelist bit. I stood in front of a lot of people and told them that I was right. Well, in fact, what I want to take you through tonight is just what I see, to my point of view, if you like. One of 6 billion points of view. So, this is it. This is the illusion. Right, so this is us, this is People's United Community. We're basically a community across the world now. There's a lot of people from different countries. We had 122 countries logged into us last month, and we had just under 7 million hits. So we're getting out to people. I don't understand what all that means, but it's meant to be good, so whatever. But we're getting to where we need to get to. We're getting a lot of information come from America and Canada, New Zealand, Australia, because it seems like what's going on here is not just specific to here. It's going on in about 52 other countries across the world, exactly the same process. They're using exactly the same process of law against these people. What you suffer every day, basically. Similar processes. So I want to ask you a couple of questions, just simple questions. Do you believe that the Parliament down in London are representatives of the people?
No. Joking.
That's a good start. That is a good start. Do you believe in politics?
That's a good joke.
No? You don't believe in politics? Not at all. Okay. Do you believe there's a political party that can be brought into power, whether an old one or a new one, that would sort all the problems out that we suffer? No. Do you believe the society we live in is broken?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm going to tell you today is the society we live in is not broken, it's working exactly how it was designed to work. And it was designed to work this way in the 1200s. In and around the time of about 1215. When a very famous document came out called Magna Carta. And Magna Carta set up a two-tier society. It set up a society of slaves, we were called serfs, and it set up the socially dominant members of society in a position where they would maintain social dominance. That was the lords and the barons and the freemen and the aldermen. So basically Magna Carta set up what we live in today. Do we believe that we have courts of justice? Courts of injustice? Do you know what an Act of Parliament is? A statute. Do you know what it is? Have you ever heard of these? You've heard of them, but you don't know what they are. And statutory instruments. Do you know what a statutory instrument is? No? But you abide by them every day. Every single day you abide by them. But you don't know what they are. And do you know what a constitution is? You heard this word? Right. Okay. I was told a little while ago by a very dear friend that the members of Parliament were actually directors of a company, a corporation. But they weren't representatives of the people, how I understand Parliament was set up. And I didn't believe it, because over the process of learning all the stuff that I've learned and understanding the stuff that I understand now, I understood this to be different than this. I believe that the people in Parliament were there and were elected by us to represent us. I did believe that. So someone told me they're directors of a company. So anyway, I went and looked, and lo and behold, I found them on a website called Dun & Bradstreet, and they're registered as a company. Now, Dun & Bradstreet is held at the highest regards by the business community for doing credit checks against corporations and companies. If you're going to do business with one of these companies, you can buy a report. As you can see, they're a lot of money, but you can buy these reports, and it gives you an in-depth breakdown of these companies. Do they do good business? Do they pay on time? Have they got a decent credit rating? But these are the members of Parliament we're talking about. Well, it's a company. Now, I couldn't understand the implications of this. And still to this day, I really don't understand the implications of this. But all I know is that anything in authority cannot be a company. That's very basic indeed. So I did a bit of all digging about, and I found that David Cameron MP is a company. Didn't make any sense, leader of the Conservatives. Gordon Brown, our Prime Minister, is a company. And then I found this one, which I found hilarious at first, and then the implications of it actually dawned on me. I found the Labour Party trade as the name Alistair Darling MP. Now, why would they trade in an MP's name? Well, Alistair Darling is a very specific MP because he's one of 3 MPs that are, I've forgotten what they are. Diplomats, that's not right. Bit of amnesia, sorry, it's the oath. He's a diplomat. And if someone trades in a diplomatic name or diplomatic status, they can basically circumvent certain laws. They can do things that are not normally done in the business community. So this just became very bizarre. So anyway, started to look at politics. And I found that politics is pertaining to the policy of the administration of a government, which makes complete sense. And policy, a plan or a course of action of a government, a political party or a corporation, it's a written contract or a certificate of insurance. If you look at your insurance, it's a policy of insurance. Acts of Parliament become statutes, primary legislation. You've heard the word legislation, yeah? Which in turn are enacted and enforced by statutory instruments, secondary legislation. And the classic example, go and look this stuff up yourself. And I will say that before I go much further, I don't want you to believe a word I'm saying. I really don't. I want you to go and look at this stuff yourself. And you can go and find this. You don't need me to show you it. You can go and find it. It's all there to be found. Because we found it. So don't believe me. Go and look at this stuff. Because you'll realise, and it's only when you realise this, that you suddenly will realise you're in an illusion. You're actually living something that is a complete fictitious thing. And I will explain. Well, an example of this is council tax, which is a statutory instrument enacted on the 1st of April 1993 under the Local Government Finance Act of 1992. So the 1992 Local Government Finance Act, 1992 Act for short, is the primary legislation that the secondary legislation was enacted under a statutory instrument. So when we look at statutory instrument, we found it to be a created written legal contract. Now that puzzled me for a long time. Contract. Why would it be a contract? Why would they be enforcing legislation under contracts? So then I started to look at society. And I found that society, and the definition, you can go and find these definitions for yourself, but I found the main definition of a society is the socially dominant members of any community. And I ask you today, as we live in this country, do we have a socially dominant membership who want to stay socially dominant? Do we not? Yeah? Who seem to be able to do things and get away with it that we can't do and get away with. And it's all been in the papers about what MPs and all that have been up to. I don't really give a toss what they get up to. But that's their world. I also found a society is a number of persons. You know, you'll see that's underlined because that's going to be underlined all the way through, and there's a reason for it. And you also see that a lot of this is capitalised. Now that is not shouting as it's denoted when you write things down. The capitalisation is to show you the legal illusion, because that's what you live in, a legal illusion. It's a number of persons united by mutual consent. That is the big word in this, consent. In order to do their right and determine and act jointly for a common purpose. Now a lot of people know this name, common purpose. And my friend Brian Garris has been doing some amazing work with this. But a society does always work to a common purpose. And its main common purpose is that the socially dominant stay socially dominant. And that is exactly what's happening to the world. That's all that's happening to the world, is the socially dominant members of all the communities of the world want to maintain their social dominance. You might call it New World Order, you might call it a number of other things. But that's basically what's happening. So I looked at a contract, because obviously statutory instruments are becoming contracts. And what is a contract? And it's an agreement between two or more persons that creates or modifies an existing relationship. There has to be offer, consideration and acceptance for a contract to exist. It has to be there. And in Roman times, a handshake was classed as entered into contract. We now say a gentleman's handshake. But basically, you shake on it. So a constitution, the fundamental rules written or unwritten that establish the character of a government by defining the basic principles which society must conform to. Okay? So it's the rules of how you live, what you live under. Not law, rules. There's a big difference between law and rules. Massive difference. And the thing about this society is, I want to ask you a question. Can you name it? Can anyone name it? Can you name the society you belong to?
The human race.
I hope it's not a society. But we're all knackered. This society that you belong to that you don't have a name for, and most of you will call yourselves citizens, and it's rammed down your throat, senior citizen, the citizen of a vice for your own. This society, you were actually joined to this, well part of you was joined to this, under this section when you couldn't express a choice. You didn't have a choice in this. This happened without you knowing what was going on. So we looked at a statute and we found it to be a legislative rule of society given force of law by the consent of the government. A rule as of a corporation, a company. It comes from the neuter of Latin and it's status. This is a big word, status. A lot of people live in this status. Bigger car, bigger this, bigger that. Status. I've got this job, I'm this, I'm that. This is all to do with the same word. Status means the legal character or condition or a person or a thing. Now, a thing is very important. Very important indeed. Because that's basically what you are, things. Now, when Magna Carta was wrote, back in the 1200s, it talks of serfs. Now, it's not written in it, but how it's described, it's talking about us as serfs. We were serfs. Now, thing goes back into, if you look at Roman Civilius law, and you go back as far as you want to go into Civilius Code, you will find that even though person and man are synonymous in grammar, Not all men are persons because slaves were classed as things. This is why it's their thing. Because that's how they define it, as a thing. You're their thing. Also by its own definition, you can see that it's not law. It's given the force of law if you agree to it. But only if you agree to it. And then it can only be given the force of law because it's not law, it's policy. And it's policy of a corporation. You just don't know that it is a corporation. The United Kingdom is a corporation. It's a company. According to Dun & Bradstreet, it's a company. Now, a lot of people have argued the toss with me with this, they really have. They've called me all sorts of names as well. But we found out up till February 2008, it was the United Kingdom PLC. It then became the United Kingdom Corporation Limited. We now understand it's the UK PLC. But we're still looking for the evidence. We still can't get screenshots of it. But basically, how it works is they run for about 18 months. And on 18 months, they dissolve the company. All the assets and liabilities stay with the original company and are quashed with the dissolvement, but the assets are transferred to a new company. It's called holdings. And there seems to be something we just recently found out, we will be bringing it out on the internet very soon, about these holding companies, because there seems to be one that's very, very specific. The United Kingdom is a corporation. If you don't believe me, go and check in the parliamentary records and you'll see in 1940, 1944 and in 1949 it was being discussed. The United Kingdom Corporation. And this is parliamentary records that you've got access to. You can go and check this out for yourself. There they are. Okay? We don't say anything unless we can prove it. It seems that this company is a corporation and all corporations have employees. And it's not just civil servants. If you have a national insurance number, you are an employee of this company. Have you all got national insurance numbers? Company policy of this corporation requires me, or it did, as an employee, which I was, up to a little while ago, to pay tax and follow all the legislative rules of this corporation, in this case, statutes. As in any company, if I break the rules, I'm going to get disciplined under that company's legislation. Disciplinary procedures. We looked at this and we found that all the police forces in the United Kingdom are companies. Every single one of them. And the corporate policy enforcement officers, as you would know, police, their job is to enforce the rules of the corporation, and they enforce acts. What do they say to you when they catch you doing something? You have broken this act, this legislation of this act. That act is a statute. It turns out that all the courts of the United Kingdom Corporation are companies run for profit too. Every single court is a company, a business, and it is private land. And a man sat in the audience will bear witness to this, because he's found out. Except, if I break the rules, they invite me. Now, I'll put invite, because I'll show you this later, but they summons me to this place of business to discuss my punishment for breaking the rules. Except they're not inviting me. I just thought they were. It seems even the highest court in the land is a corporation. Do we know what the highest court in the land is? House of Lords. It's a company. They're all companies. Every single one of them. Doesn't matter where you look or what you look into. Look at your ambulance, look at your fire brigade, look at your schools. Your schools are trading names of the local county council. Your hospitals are trading names of the local NHS trust. They're trading, they're companies.